Well, good evening. Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Hello there, Mark Bunzel. This is your co-host Peter Schrappen, Northwest Marine Trade Association's Vice President and Director of Government Affairs. And we're at week 20 of this, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was worried about our having another smoke situation in the area, and we had fog this morning up here in beautiful Anacortes till about noon, but then it cleared up and it was a pretty day. But prior to that, during the week, it was beautiful, and I even got out to do some boating.
I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Yeah, there was smoke in Seattle as well, or fog, as I kept telling myself, and I could hear the foghorns coming from the ferries all the way up in Wallingford. So yeah, it was, and it makes for a great sunset. I'll give Mother Nature that. So yeah.
Yes, it does.
Very good. So what's on tap this evening, sir?
Well, we've got an interesting show. It's a little bit on the techie side, but we've got a true expert. Doug Miller is going to be with us to talk about AIS, along with Leonard and Lorena. And Leonard and Lorena should be popping up here. There they are. Hello, Leonard and Lorena. Now you got out, and there's Doug. Hey, Doug. And Leonard and Lorena, you got out to do some boating last weekend. Where did you go?
Oh, we did. We went up to Cyprus and did that right before the smoke set in here, when it was absolutely gorgeous, right after the rains, and it was good shoulder season cruising. We have a few comments on that. We'll talk a little bit about that. But yes, we were out. It was wonderful.
Excellent. And I was going to while we get started here, Mark, I was going to put a plug in for our chat. We've opened up chats. If people want to just join us in the chat room with just saying hi and where you're from, that would be fun to see where people are from. So you can just go down at the bottom part of your screen and say, hi, this is so-and-so from so-and-so. And that would be a great way to get it rolling this evening.
We need to find out if your mother's watching.
Oh, she is. We talked, she traded emails this morning, and she got a kick out of last week, as did a whole bunch of other people I heard from. Last week's show was something special for sure. So we'll do our best to see if we can.
Who knew we could make seasickness funny? But I give a lot of credit to Annie Fire-Eisen about that, and she did a great job.
Well, oh, there she is, Jenny from St. Louis. I'm loving you all. There you go. So she's in the house. Mark, I was asked by my boss, George Harris, what HURLIS stood for, and I could only get Horizon, and that was it. So what is HURLIS?
No, it's not even Horizon.
There you go. Exactly. That's what I said. It's not Horizon, George.
Hydrate.
Hydrate. Okay. Well, what was the
Hydrate, Medicate. Now I'm
Medicate.
Lorena, you're always my help.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, we have one job.
The last one is L is for level, keep the horizon. So you had that one just out of order.
And L is, or R is relax.
That's what it is, relax, yeah.
And what was the U?
We have not gotten any suggestions on the chat line yet for what BARF stands for. So we're going to let that one slide away into oblivion here.
Excellent. And we've got the Webbers checking in from Kirkland. We've got Michael Sider from Bainbridge Island, my mom from St. Louis, and we've got Cap Sandy G-Doc checking in, Beth Carpenter there. So thanks for being a part of the big show tonight. And yeah, I was just going to share a few things I've been working on, Mark, if you don't mind. I had a kind of an interesting day. Every day is different for me. I started at 9 o'clock with meeting with Representative Peterson. He owns a cheese and wine shop out of Edmonds, so he knows the Port of Edmonds. And we talked about a funny little tax issue that if you and I, Mark, were going to rent a large vessel where the skipper and crew were provided, we would have to pay tax for the entire value of the vessel. So let's say the vessel's at, I don't know, $50 million. Let's pick a round number. A super yacht, a Westport super yacht built in our own state. That tax bill for a 2-week vacation would be $5 million as you pick yourself up off the floor there. We know that definitely dissuades a whole lot of economic activity. And our ask to the legislature next session, as it looks, will be to just have that tax applied to the transaction of the vacation. So a $100,000 2-week vacation, just pay $10,000 in taxes, and you will trust us when we say that you will recoup that and more as you think about how much boaters spend on their provisioning and repair and refit. So worked on that. And then we had a government affairs committee meeting. We had 2 candidates coming in from the Ballard area, meeting with our government affairs committee. We're undertaking an economic impact study. So I met with an economist there to talk about the overall economic impact of maritime. I was just attending the ARBA board meeting, Mark. Your name was mentioned in good graces, of course. Only good. And also one other issue I'm working on, Andrews Bay. Do you know where Andrews Bay is, Mark?
Sure do, on Lake Washington. You bet.
Exactly. So apparently there's been some tomfoolery going on there with boaters and maybe some carousing. So the neighbors aren't too impressed with boating activity. So they've reached out to their city council member, and that's a new one for me. And so I need to figure out what that means moving forward. But yeah, just a day in the life of Peter Schrappen. Thanks for asking.
Well, the Seattle Harbor Police are typically patrolling that area. We talked about the Harbor Police, 2 shows ago, and they're an important part of that, and they'll probably be the ones assigned to be patrolling that area a little bit more frequently.
Yeah, but I'll be on a Harbor Patrol 101 Zoom call tomorrow to learn even more from Kevin Hastings, who works
Sure.
in that area and is on the RBOB board as well, and he'll be educating a whole coalition of folks tomorrow. So looking forward to that. So yeah, enough about me, Mark. I could go on all night, but what's going on with you?
Well, we've got some things going on, updates to talk about. You mentioned the ARBA, and I'm going to talk about the Lake Bay Marina in a few moments. But Leonard, Lorena, any updates for South Sound or San Juan Islands?
Yeah, a little bit. I wanted to talk, first of all, we were out, and one of the things that we'd talked earlier on one of the other shows about shoulder season cruising and some of the unique characteristics of shoulder season cruising. One of them being that that usually you have far fewer boats out there, and there's a lot of availability. At some of the guest docks, those guest docks are filled later in the fall with permanent or monthly moorage tenants, and the marinas are starting to fill those. It's October 1st. And this is when they start to put the seasonal moorage in there. So people that are in guest moorage areas that pay month by month. And so those people are filling up now. So you have a little bit less guest moorage space. Shoulder season cruising. The other thing we noticed when we were out at Cypress Island, we were at Eagle Harbor. And that is that people that are out right now, whether they're on a buoy or anchored out, the shoulder season cruisers stay a little longer in one spot. So we were there for, I think, 2 or 3 nights, and there were some boats there that had been there for at least 2 or 3 nights, had a routine set up where each morning they would head out with their little day sailor and come back to the mothership and fix breakfast, and they were there for a while. So it's one of the characteristics of shoulder season and the people that have the luxury and the flexibility to be out there for a while. But it was wonderful. Like I said, we were Cypress Island, and where this time of year you probably should find 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even half the mooring buoys empty. They were full. Maybe 1 or 2 were open, but that was about it, and that was during the day. Most of them were filled all night. Pelican was filled. It was very good. Of course, it was exceptionally good weather. No wind and clear air. Wonderful day. It was beautiful.
We hiked up to Eagle Cliff with fantastic views, 360-degree views, and it is open this time of year, so we highly recommend that. If you're looking for a day trip or a weekend trip, it's a great hike.
So I had one other small update. This is a marina thing, and I want to do a share screen here and see if I can do this, find the right one. This is a kind of a message about why do you need to keep the docks clear, and this came from Elliott Bay Marina. Oops, and do you see it?
Yeah, it's Elliott Bay Marina at night there, Leonard.
Yeah, I had it. That was, let me try that one more time. Let's see if it was this one. And
there you go.
Yeah, I'll leave it that way. I tried to make it full screen. So this happened at Elliott Bay Marina, thanks to their newsletter that was just out. And apparently what happened was that somebody left a rubber mat out and it blew up against the dock over Labor Day. And with a rising tide, it wedged up against the piling hoop and submerged the end of the piling. They ended up having to come out with a chainsaw and cut the whaler so that the thing would free up the finger float, and so it wouldn't damage more of the finger float. So it's one of those, I think the picture was just so good because it graphically showed why it's really important. It's one of those where seeing a rubber mat laying on the finger pier wouldn't necessarily alarm you, but boy, that's pretty amazing what happened there. So
yeah, somebody probably got a bill for that, huh?
oh, I'm sure somebody got a bill for that.
It could have been worse though. It could have taken a couple of boats down that might have been tied up to that dock.
Yeah. Well, the other one was noticed the picture of the guy with a chainsaw cutting that, and there must be a lot of pressure ready to release there. And I'm not sure I'd want to be standing around that one. It finally lets go. But
Yeah, a couple other items in the news. Deer Harbor Marina, they're adding some guest moorage, some side tie guest moorage at the end of A dock, Alpha dock, and D dock, Delta dock. So that is very welcome because Deer Harbor is a popular destination and often full. So having a little more guest moorage is welcome. That will be available in the 2021 cruising season. The Galley Restaurant in Fisherman Bay, they're nearing completion of their extensive remodel, and they'll have 2 buoys marked with the restaurant name that you can tie up to while you're dining. You can also tie your dinghy up to their dock on the northeast corner there in the shallow area. And for 2021, they're planning to deliver pizza to your boat if you're anchored out. So you can call up, place your order, and they'll come out and deliver your pizza.
while you're on that one, Fisherman Bay, this is a side note that something we just added to the 2021 Wagoner, and that is there's a float plane operations area in the northwest area of Fisherman Bay. And I think very few people are aware of that. I wasn't even aware that there is a Port of Lopez, and the Port of Lopez has established this float plane area. And we now have it in the map on the Wagoner Guide for the 2021 depicting that map, the float plane operations area. They had some problems this year where there were so many boats anchored in there that the float planes couldn't get in and out. They're just too tight, not enough space. Sorry?
The last update here, Arabella's landing in Gig Harbor. They're mainly permanent moorage, but they do have some guest moorage that they offer, but they're playing it safe and keeping the guest moorage closed until the end of the year. So that's it for updates.
Yeah, regarding the Canadian border, it's our most popular, most often asked question. We don't have any update for that. It's still set that the next announcement will be October 21, but we're all watching this and watching the situation in Canada. And the numbers in Canada are going up. They're getting a wave of COVID across the country. And I suspect that we will not see the border open up. And we're just hoping for next season. But I'm preparing people when they talk about, excuse me, well, should I go plan my trip for next summer up through Canada? I'm cautioning them. The border may not be open next year. We'll just have to wait and see. This is very frustrating to figure out how this COVID is all working and not working. So next on our updates, kind of sad news in a way, and something that we've been involved with this webcast, and that's we got a press release that the Lake Bay Marina purchase by Arbaugh has fallen through. And the press release goes into quite a bit of detail, but in short, Arbaugh went to extend the deadline, which was September 30th, and they tried to sweeten that with some additional monies for the seller, the owner, to extend that. And he not only refused that, but he said anything past September 30th, the price would go up by 250% to over $3 million. And that just seems, by all counts, to be excessive for that property. Peter, was there any discussion during the board meeting of that that adds any more detail into that?
You know, they hadn't gotten to that part of the agenda yet, but I saw Bob's communication yesterday, and he was rather solemn this evening. So yeah, really unfortunate turn of events there with so much momentum, and then for it not to happen is really disappointing.
Yeah, so the big question, many of us, and some of us on this webcast tonight, myself, the Landons, donated money for the purchase of Lake Bay. and that's not going to happen. And Bob Weiss has reassured us that if you feel you would like your donation back, he will make arrangements for that. As he said from the beginning, this is going into the Conservancy Fund, and if you do elect to leave your money and your donation in the Conservancy Fund, they intend to put that towards other projects that they're doing. One that is near and dear to our heart that we're especially interested in is mooring balls and stern ties, basically expanding the moorage opportunities in our area, in our Puget Sound area. We watched the success of this up in Canada with BC Parks Forever actually raising money to put in stern ties in Desolation Sound and then the Princess Louisa area. And it's been very, very effective, providing more opportunities. And we'd like to see that in Puget Sound and the San Juan Islands. So this is something that Leonard, Lorena, and I are going to be following up on, and we'll be reporting back on that. But if you do want a refund of your donation because it's not going for its intended purpose to purchase the Lake Bay Marina, let Arbaugh know, or you can let me know, and we'll let Arbaugh know that we need to get you your money back. And some people have also asked if they were going to get a tax deductible receipt for that. You should have already received that. If you did not, also let us know and we'll make sure that you get a receipt for that donation. And that's in particular if you made that donation online on their website, to make sure that you have a receipt for that and can deduct that properly from your income taxes. Donald Trump has asked for his receipt because of his donation to that. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
I just had to touch on that of tax deductible receipts. You mean
the reality TV star?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got my tax bill yesterday, for last year, and I can tell you I did pay quite a bit more taxes than Donald Trump did. It was rather shocking, as they always are. Anyway, but here we are. I still have Wagner clothes on.
It's Mark, I know we've got a big show tonight talking AIS. Should we move right into that topic?
You're going to save me on that.
As
right?
I awkwardly segue, that's an awkward segue.
That's why we co-host this.
Is that smooth there, Leonard?
One of us is the Ed McMahon of this show. We haven't figured out which one, so we just try to save each other.
Hey-o.
Yes, Peter. AIS, and those of you worried about a techie talk, there is going to be some technology in this. We're going to keep it light and understandable, but AIS is something that has come on that has just been fascinating for collision avoidance and for other things. And the other things are what we're going to talk about with Doug. So Doug, thank you. Doug is with Milltech in Port Orchard. Although Doug confided to me last year that he has taken his entire business. He closed his storefront down and he now works from anywhere in the world. And I think at that particular discussion that day, I don't know, you were in the South Pacific or something. And I said, boy, he's doing it right. So Doug, we appreciate everything you're doing, and you're helping customers from wherever you are. So first of all, explain AIS for us. What does it stand for? How does it work? What does it do?
Well, thanks, Mark, and hi, everyone. Yeah, AIS is Automatic Identification System. If you'd like, I got a couple of slides I'll put up. I'll try to not turn this into a total PowerPoint show, but I think it'll help people understand. But essentially what we're talking about is a device, you know, an AIS device that's sort of a black box or a screen that picks up information from other vessels, translates it into digital information, and then that gets transmitted to your chart plotter, your computer, your iPad, so that you can see other vessels in relation to your position. So you'll see people moving along the chart. If there's a ferry crossing in front of you, you'll see them coming along and hopefully be able to avoid them. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen for just a sec here. And So just quickly, some of the highlights of what AIS is. It's primarily for collision avoidance, but people like to use it for tracking as well, so that they can see where their friends are, their family. It's basically a digital transceiver system, so it takes GPS position and encapsulates that into a broadcast message that's sent to other vessels to tell them exactly where you are. And it transmits more than your position. It also has identification like your vessel name, the position of the vessel, call sign, type of vessel, dimensions, that sort of thing. Probably one of the most important things for AIS is it uses this unique 9-digit MMSI number that's common to the MMSI number you use on your radio. So most people should have a VHF radio today that has DSC and you've programmed in your MMSI. It's the exact same MMSI that gets programmed into your AIS system. And that's kind of the unique identifier that will be used in the whole AIS system to be able to identify you. So we have a number of different types of devices. Quickly, I'll talk about these and then have a little chart that'll help, I think. But there is some confusion about Class A, Class B receivers, transceivers, transponders. Essentially, all AIS receivers and transponders, or also known as transceivers, receive all AIS information. So that means if you have a receiver, whether it's in your radio or a separate device, it will pick up all the information that's being broadcast out there. And then transceivers or transponders are also at the same time sending out your information to anybody else in range. And Mark had asked a question about, how often do these updates go? Well, it's really depends on the device that you have and how fast you're moving. So the faster you move, the more updates you're broadcasting. When you're at rest or at anchor or at the dock, it's only every 3 minutes. So it does automatically manage itself. And it is an automatic system in that it assigns slots. Each transponder can basically own a slot and then transmit its information in a fairly regular fashion. The exception to that, and we'll talk about it in a sec, is some of the earlier Class B units are what we call polite systems. So they wait for the commercial traffic, essentially Class A and some of the more advanced Class B systems to be sort of done with their transmission, and then they jump in. And then finally, how much does it cost? It's really a very inexpensive add-on for your boat and a very, very important safety feature. So starting from just over $400, you can equip yourself with a send and receive AIS transponder, and definitely worth the investment. And I think a lot of people who have AIS have said, this is something that's in fact saved my life. So I'll stop there for a sec before I jump forward, just to see if anybody there has any questions.
No, I'm fine. I agree with you, Doug. I've been cruising with it now. Started out with an inexpensive receiver, and which I believe was from your company. It was a Milltech receiver, I believe. And then I replaced a radio with built-in AIS, and that was very inexpensive to add and upgrade on a boat. And as I like to say, when I did that, I not only got AIS, but my radio was much clearer because I had a new radio. And those new radios can be $200, $250 and up. So we're not talking about a big investment. Right. And there are some advantages when it's built in. There's no installation cost to connect the AIS. But in that case, I was able to connect it to my chart plotter, and wow, automatically, there it was. A very robust system. Today, I've upgraded to a transceiver system, and so now I'm transmitting information, and I have some peace of mind that the ferries and commercial vessels, especially that Victoria Clipper that's going along at 35 miles an hour, they can see me out on the water. And in addition to what they have for radar, they have some identification. And I like to say that AIS for me, when put on my multifunction display, allows me to interpret the blobs on my radar to what they are and the actual ship they are, and information of which the closest point of approach is something that I look at all the time. How close will that ferry get next to me, and what evasive action do I need to take? So I think it's just fantastic and can't recommend it enough.
Great. Yeah. And oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of just echoing well a little bit of what Mark said. We started out with just a receive only unit, and same kind of thing. It brought an awareness as to how valuable the system was and how many things it could do, and it was very inexpensive too, just to do the receive only. And then that lured me into I need to be transmitting as well. And they you were talking about seeing the fast moving targets. It was we were out over just on north of North Pender Island, and with the receive only, and noticed this target moving up the channel at about 38 knots, and just flying across there. And it was the Canadian hydrofoil. They have two of those, and they were screaming up there, and it was very nice to be alerted to that long before I could see them with binoculars.
We've had a few questions in the chat box. John Grace is wondering who in Anacortes can install this system.
Actually, let's see now, KNR. We've done a lot of work with them. I think I'm getting that right, KNR.
Yes.
Yeah.
KNL, actually.
KNL, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do great work. What I generally recommend to folks is go to the NEMA.org site and look at certified installers there, and especially advanced certified installers. If you've passed that test, you actually have an idea of what you're doing. So that's always a good guide. You can search by location, by town, by state, and that sort of thing. So that's always a good place to start.
Then Terry Bro is wondering, with all new AIS Class B broadcasts every 30 seconds while moving, will all new AIS Class B's broadcast every 30 seconds while moving? Right.
So just to talk a little bit about the various classes, as I mentioned, Class A is essentially the commercial class. That's what the large Washington State ferries and Victoria Clipper, an oil tanker, whatever, they'll have a Class A transponder. They look like something like this. And they transmit about 30 miles. It's line of sight VHF, but typically it's about 30 miles when you're out on the water. And they transmit more often than any other type of AIS, mainly because it's a mission critical system for them. Then we have Class B SOTDMA, self-organizing time division multiple access, also known as Class B plus by some vendors. And that basically has a little less power, 5-watt transmission power. So it transmits about 10 to 15 miles. And it's used by both smaller commercial and for recreational, especially fast recreational boats. And we'll talk a bit about why I recommend it for offshore use as well. But one of the important things with this newish technology, it's newer than the other Class B, is that you get assigned a slot for transmitting your information, and you basically own that slot. It's exactly the same system that the large commercial systems use. So you transmit much more reliably and more often and a little bit further. So if that's important for you, that's a good way to go. Then we have the older Class B technology, the carrier sense system. It transmits with 2 watts, and it's about 5 to 7 miles, like commercial, recreational. There's lots of great Class B CES systems out there. This one, the Vesper Marine Blue Box, a lot of people have this. A great system. It's yes, it's a 2-watt system, but it's more than adequate for most recreational boaters. Then you have a whole class of safety devices, man overboard devices like this little one here. This is an Ocean Signal Mob 1, very small. It's like a little mini transponder. It's got a GPS built in. when it gets activated, if you fall in the water, it'll send your GPS position, as well as a safety alert message that anybody with a DSE radio or AIS system can pick up. Another exciting development are aids to navigation. A lot of the aids now, the big yellow buoys all have AIS, essentially AIS broadcast devices on them. And those can have a variety of ranges because they also have the concept of virtual aids to navigation. So they can be essentially put into place without physically being there by the vessel traffic service and others. And then you have the concept of just a receiver. The idea is that you receive all the broadcasts, but you're not transmitting everything. So some of the popular radios, like some of the standard Horizon radios, Simrad and others, ICOM, they have AIS receivers built in and have the ability to see other traffic around you, and but they're not transmitting any AIS information.
So Doug, I've got marine traffic on my smartphone. So don't I have enough?
Well, funny you should mention that. I'm going to jump ahead to a little screenshot here that I took of, on the left, we have the marine traffic phone app. And I live in Port Orchard on Rich Passage, and we have the Rich Passage and other fast ferries now traveling through Rich Passage, going 42 knots as they come screaming around the corner there. They actually go faster as they go around the corner in order to create less wake. So over on the left, we can see a position here. I don't know if my pointer will show up here, but we have the Rich Passage showing up at 1528, going 35 knots away down here. But my real AIS system at exactly the same time is showing the Rich Passage away up here, actually well into Rich Passage. And we can see it's going 41.4 knots. And the reason for this is essentially marine traffic has a delay. Sometimes it can be quite a long delay. Sometimes it's just a few minutes. But when you think about it, if you're in the fog like we've had here and trying to maneuver in Rich Passage with that fast ferry coming, you really want to have real-time information. And that's why people get their own AIS devices.
I end up using marine traffic now for long distance information. In other words, sometimes when I'm crossing the Strait of Juan de Fuca or Turn Point, I'll look on marine traffic on my smartphone and see vessels that are 30 miles away to understand if they're going to be a factor, large vessels. So I use both to some degree, but yes. I don't trust the marine traffic for close-in information.
Yeah, it's great for at a distance. We were coming back from Desolation Sound last year and our buddy boat was away ahead of us, and I was just curious where they were. Well, they were outside of my range that I could pick up, but I went on marine traffic. I was able to see that they were almost down to Pender. So
good.
So just a couple of more quick things in case it's not obvious from the how it works. But if you think of yourself as that boat, the sailboat in the center of the screen here, it's got an AIS transponder and it's exchanging information with the freighter, which is number 2. So basically they can both see each other. And surprisingly, in some cases, commercial traffic will call you and say, I see you on AIS, would you please pass us astern? In other words, don't try to beat us going in front of us. And they're always very professional, very friendly. So it's a really nice feature to have. But we also have the ability to see aids to navigation, like we'll see here in Puget Sound as we're maneuvering out towards Admiralty Inlet. We can also see signals both virtually and directly from some of these markers. And then if somebody falls overboard, like with this device here, it'll automatically start an AIS broadcast that can be picked up not only by your boat, but by other boats. And then of course, with number 6, if we're on a collision course, you have the ability, especially with your chart plotter or your navigation program, to see, as Mark said, the closest point of approach and time to closest point of approach. So you can see in 1 minute, 37 seconds, I'm going to pass within 400 yards of that boat. In many cases, you can turn a little bit and see how does that change, and see that it gets recalculated instantly. So a really nice feature for helping you make decisions well ahead of those crunch times when you're about to run into somebody.
Doug, I just want to point out this man overboard function. There are some man overboard devices that when you go in the water will send out a signal up to a satellite and to a rescue center, basically to a worldwide network of rescue centers. And there is a delay with that, and it then requires that rescue center to let authorities know. Now, in our waters, and the temperature of our waters, I would rather, if I'm wearing that going into the water, be letting all the boats around me to have an emergency signal where I am in the water at a particular time, so they could actually find me and hopefully find me before I go into complete hypothermia. So
Yep.
I don't think the other personal beacons are satisfactory, but the ones that are using AIS, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, and that's a really good, important point. And as I mentioned, with these little devices, they broadcast both DSC emergency broadcasts as well as AIS emergency broadcasts. So anybody who has a DSC radio is in the vicinity, their radio will start alarming, and they'll see the position on the radio and their chart plotter if it happens to be connected. Just on that point, though, about the EPIRBs and personal location devices, there's actually a very cool emergency device that does both EPIRB and AIS. McMurdo make this EPIRB. And it's super important because, as you say, the EPIRB will send out this message that gets picked up halfway across the world, and they start deploying assets to rescue you. But the AIS side can do the last mile, or if there's somebody that happens to be nearby, they'll see that signal and be able to come and rescue you right away, as opposed to waiting for an emergency broadcast with the Coast Guard.
Good.
Great. Let me see, just a couple of other things just to mention. How are we doing on time here? Oh, not too bad.
You're doing great.
Great. So a lot of people ask, okay, so I buy one of these devices. Let's say I buy this one here. How do I connect it? What do I do with it? How is it used on my boat? So this is kind of a typical install. You've got typically 2 antennas. One's a VHF antenna, specially tuned for AIS. And then you've also got a GPS antenna so that you can fix your own position. And some of the modern AIS devices have GPS antennas built into them, so you don't necessarily have to string an extra GPS antenna on the boat. Also, some of these devices, like this one here, you can see there's 2 antenna connectors here and here. They allow you to have a splitter built into the device to share your existing VHF antenna. So it makes it super easy for install. You don't have to start stringing extra cable and putting up extra antennas and that sort of thing. Then you've got typically a cable that will allow you to power the device. These are powered with the usual 12 to 24 volts. You'll have input and output wires for hooking up to a chart plotter, either using NEMA 0183, the older standard, or preferably NEMA 2000, where you can just essentially plug it into your NEMA 2000 network, and then the AIS data will be available to any device that's plugged into the network. And then you also have, for instance, USB connections if you want to use it with a marine navigation package on your PC or Mac or whatever. And mainly popularized by this device here, the XB8000 from Vesper Marine, folks started adding Wi-Fi support. And so why would you want Wi-Fi on an AIS device? This allows you to send the AIS and GPS data to your phone or to your iPad or your Android tablet and be able to see real-time live AIS data and position data on numerous apps that are available out there. So that's sort of a typical setup that you'd see on any boat that has an AIS transponder.
Doug, we've got a couple of questions that came in on the chat line. Mark Malden has a good one I've wondered about, and that's, is there a different icon for a man overboard AIS signal rather than the triangle? Or is man overboard still a triangle?
It's actually a function of the display device. So your chart plotter or your app on your phone or whatever will determine whether they should show you a different icon. But typically they do, because it is encoded with a different type of message, a different type of MMSI. And when the display device sees that, they usually show it as a, like a red X or something different than just a green target moving by.
And Gregory Pena has an excellent question that was on my list to ask you, but he said he loves that AIS can see around the corner and see that there's something coming where radar would be blocked by land. And I added to that in my research, AIS is a line of sight device. So how does AIS see around a corner?
Well, it's using VHF radio signals. And as you can, we can find when we're in Port Orchard here, we can hear Vessel Traffic Service or the Coast Guard in Seattle. Basically, VHF can sort of poke through objects on the land much better than, for instance, radar. But especially as you get closer and you're coming around a corner, we find that here at Rich Passage, a very tight corner, you can't see around the corner, but you definitely see all the AIS targets. So it is line of sight, but it's like VHF radios. You can see targets well around the corner and behind land and that sort of thing.
Hey, Doug, question for you?
Yeah.
This kind of came up during the busy season this year, and somebody was trying to estimate how many boats were in Echo Bay based upon the number of AIS targets that they could see somewhere. What do you have a figure? How many boats, what percent of boats have AIS transponders?
I don't know the exact figure right now. I know it's a lot. I was out the other day between Bainbridge Island and Seattle, and my system had 448 targets on it at that time. So definitely a lot of targets. Now, I will say one thing. A lot of those targets were moored at their slip in Elliott Bay Marina or Shell, and they're basically taking up slots in the AIS system. So one thing I would encourage people to do is when you get to your slip, turn off your AIS system. Don't leave it on, because it's actually causing some damage to the integrity of AIS. And I do this demo when I do my talk at the boat show and that sort of thing, of showing exactly that happening, where targets that I should be seeing are not visible because I have 400 targets directly behind me, and the ones that are in front of me basically aren't showing up. So it's an important point. But I've had the question, how many AIS targets can the system support? And it's somewhere around 2,000. There's actually 4,400 slots available, but it's determined to be around 2,000 within range. And I suspect, from a percentage point of view, we're probably still less than half the vessels that are out there. So still lots of room for growth.
So what happens though when it gets to that density? Does it filter out the far away ones and drop those so that I see those that are closer to me and more of my concern?
Well, one concern I've had with an older Garmin chart plotter I had being fed by an AIS device is it wasn't terribly predictable. I wasn't able to see a vessel 2 miles ahead of me, but I could see, a couple of hundred vessels directly behind me in Elliott Bay Marina. So to be honest, I don't know how a lot of these devices prioritize what they're going to display. It's, again, a function of the display device.
Well, which is a really good point. You and I discussed this on the phone before the show, and that I also found out that it's really important for you to update the software or firmware on your GPS plotter to the latest version of it, that the manufacturer, Garmin or Raymarine or Simrad, may have added new capabilities in the software related to AIS, which you won't see unless you have the latest software. Don't you agree, Doug?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For instance, some of the older systems didn't show aids to navigation, for example. And so with a software update, they were able to support that. Man overboard devices are fairly new as well. So an older chart plotter may not show those without an update. So yeah, very important.
So, and a lot of those updates are free from the manufacturers. They don't charge for it. They'll list that on their website. So if you haven't done it during the off season, you may want to take a look at the version of the software on your chart plotter and the latest version that they show available on the website. And if they have a new version available, you download it onto typically onto a memory card, and then there will be instructions for how to update that software. And I have 2 different chart plotters on my boat, and I update them once a year just to make sure. I also noticed that when I'm using software navigational packages, and on my boat, I've got both Time Zero and Coastal Explorer, and I noticed that there's all kinds of capabilities that those software packages have added, even more advanced than the chart plotters. We talked a moment ago about, Leonard mentioned about being able to see a complete list of everything, and you can even filter that list. And Leonard, I think you mentioned the other day that there's a capability that you can have a buddy list, so that an alert comes off when one of your buddies, when it senses their AIS transmission, it lets you know that one of your buddies is in the area.
Yeah, that's on the Coastal Explorer, and which is a great feature. The other one that I have questions about too is the information targets or information that comes from AIS that shows up on Coastal Explorer. And we started noticing this up in Southeast Alaska a number of years ago, and it was fixed land-based stations, usually light stations, and they were reporting observed weather. Another one of them that we've seen consistently is up here in Howe Sound at Pam Rock, and it's constantly broadcasting out the current weather, wind direction, and wind speed. And for years, I've tried to find a list of all these different places. I don't even know the correct terminology for looking for this, but it pops up on the Coastal Explorer as an AIS information display. Can you speak to this a little bit, Doug?
Sure. Yeah, so AIS does have a messaging capability, and for a lot of the aids to navigation, something that they're working on is the idea of being able to broadcast real-time weather or real-time wind information, maybe tide information, that sort of thing, and that's available to a program or a chart plotter that's able to read that information. Problem is, not a lot of programs or chart plotters know how to handle it. You know, it's great that you were finding it worked well with Coastal Explorer. And in fact, I've been doing some work with the Canadian Coast Guard. They have 3 experimental stations that they've put up where they're going to be doing real-time weather and tides and that sort of thing. And I know up in Alaska, they do a lot of that as well. So, and it's kind of interesting. Mark asked this earlier about, well, if there's a messaging system, can I message back and forth between my AIS buddies or not? Technically, you could with a more advanced AIS system, but there's no user interface built today that would take advantage of that. And to be honest, I'm not sure that the standards folks are really encouraging it too much. I think they really want to reserve that for important information like weather broadcasts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this and we thought, and I've seen it referred to as text to AIS or text service rather than text on your phone. And, you know, it made me think that the next guy that goes by my boat and wakes me when he goes by at 40 knots, I could send a text sending him to slow down, and it'll pop up right on his MFD right in front of him. And I'm sure that's what the authorities do not want.
Yeah.
But
well, and you have to add, that was my first question after that was, would it have capability for emoji?
Yeah, probably not.
Well, our conversation went downhill, but I also saw an article talking about the future capability of getting a commercial, hot pizza now coming out of the oven, and you could order your pizza from the pizza boat and over AIS, which there's so many other better uses than ordering pizza. But it's going to be interesting to see where this technology can actually be used and integrated.
So on that theme, one thing that we get a lot of questions about is being able to track your vessel beyond your local waters. Folks who are going up to Alaska, they like their family to be able to track them as they're going on their trip. And marine traffic will be able to track you in the more populated areas where they're receiving stations. But once you get away from, civilization, essentially, you're not going to be tracked. And so they've offered this service to allow you to be tracked by a satellite. And so now they even have a consumer version of their tracking service that you can sign up for and track one MMSI number anywhere in the world. And so I know a lot of folks have used this with family, so that they have basically a single login and they can go in and view, where grandma and grandpa are on their sailboat going up to Alaska, pretty much anywhere along the whole route. So that's kind of an exciting new development. And one of the key things here is that the newer transponders, the new Class B plus or SOTDMA systems, have this thing called Message 27. And what that is a special message that's been created for use by satellites. So it's a shortened message and it gets broadcast on a different frequency, and the satellite systems can pick that up and know exactly where you are. And this is not only just for sort of recreational use, but of course that helps authorities who are trying to rescue somebody out in the middle of the ocean as well.
Yeah, when we say line of sight, I also read reports that I didn't realize that a VHF signal will actually go for miles if not blocked by land. And it'll go shooting right off the edge of the earth, right out into space. So when we see 2 watts or 5 watts or 12.5, that can be plenty to communicate with a satellite.
Yes, that's right. And many of these devices, even this device, which is a 2-watt device, it has an exact Earth chip in it that's designed for optimizing the message for satellites using the regular AIS system. So you don't necessarily have to have a high-powered AIS system to be seen by satellites, but a 5-watt system is definitely going to up your chances for being seen.
Interesting.
The other thing you mentioned about the range, I often get reports from people who are out on the ocean that they can see AIS targets 50 miles away with their AIS system on board without any extra equipment. So, definitely a benefit there.
Well, and to that point, antenna height apparently is more critical to get that antenna up to be able to reach that signal that's either bending around the earth or is beyond the curvature of the earth at that point.
Yep. And actually, I've written a blog article, and if you get a chance, there's lots and lots of free information on our site, but about the AIS VHF antenna that you use with your AIS system is actually the most important part of the whole system, regardless of the AIS transponder receiver that you buy. And
what's that website that people can get to?
It's milltechmarine.com, or actually you can go to www.ais.expert. And I have a blog area up there and post articles about AIS, how to configure AIS and that sort of thing.
Great. I'll put that in the chat box, folks.
Great. So you're absolutely right. If you've got a sailboat, it's a no-brainer. You put a good antenna on the top of your mast, use a splitter. The splitter will work much, much better than putting a second antenna, for instance, on your stern rail on a sailboat, mainly because you're free and clear of all that interference from other pieces of metal. If you have a power boat, a lot of people have dual antennas. That works great. You can get those up as high as you can, and the higher the better. The higher the antenna, the more range you'll get. And as I was telling a customer today, you could put a coat hanger on the top of your mast and get a decent signal, more so than putting a great antenna at deck level with lots of other metal clutter around it.
What I also saw as a factor is making sure you have good cabling and clean connectors, that they don't have corrosion on them. So if you want to maximize your performance for your radio as well as your AIS system, you may want to go through and either clean all your connectors or just replace them and upgrade them.
Yeah, and I have personal experience on my own boat with this. One segment of cable, I replaced one of the PL259s on one end, and it was working better, and then it degraded again, and I did testing with a VSWR meter and finally located where the issue was, replaced that connector, and again, I was getting, pretty much a perfect signal. But the big issue, connectors and cable can play as much of a role in getting a great AIS signal as a good antenna.
Good. So we've talked about cost. We've talked about, now you made a point about this MMSI number. How do I get one? Because statistics that I saw said over 90% of the boaters do not have an MMSI number and do not have it programmed into their radio to even do emergency DSC calls. So in other words, that red button on the front of the radio, if my son or daughter were on the boat and wanted to call for emergency help, because I'm laying on the floor of the boat, if they push that and I haven't programmed it into my radio, nothing happens.
Yeah, so super important to get an MMSI number and put it in both your radio and your AIS transponder. I think the numbers are coming up a bit now, especially with people using AIS. They have an MMSI number programmed in, but I actually think a radio is more important for the exact reason you said, which is you want the ability to push the big red button and be able to send out information about who you are and where you are. And so how do you get an MMSI number? There are two main sources. If you're doing a lot of international voyages, including Canada, it's recommended that you get an FCC issued MMSI number, and you get that by applying for a ship station license with the FCC, and it takes a couple of days and a couple $100, and you'll get a ship station license and an MMSI number that can be used on your radio and on your AIS system. If you're just cruising in this general area and not going to Canada, a boat US or a US Power Squadron MMSI can be used in both your radio and your AIS system. That said, if you have, say, a boat US MMSI number in your radio and you go to Canada, it'll still work. And I've even heard stories that you can call the Canadian Coast Guard and offer up your MMSI number and contact info, and they'll put it in their database. So it's not like things won't work, but the letter of the law says if you want to use your VHF radio outside of US waters, you need to have an FCC license. And when you get that, you get an FCC MMSI.
Good to know. And I tell people in my classes, if you don't want to fork out the money to do that, I would just assume you get the free or $25 number from Boat US. At least you have something in your radio, and that DSC emergency capability will work with that. And that's so much better than having nothing.
Right. And an important thing is, even if you have a Boat US MMSI number and you're in Asia, sailing, you will still have a functioning AIS and DSC radio system. People will be able to see you. They'll be able to see your name if you had a call sign, and they'll see your MMSI number. It's just what happens is if somebody initiates an emergency broadcast outside of US waters and you have an MMSI number issued by Boat US, the rescue authorities in Canada or Mexico or Colombia or wherever you are won't be able to look up who you are, because that Boat US system is a private system.
Doug, this is all great information. I really appreciate that. We're going to have Doug come back in a couple of weeks. We've got an exciting development. Doug mentioned Vesper as a company that is really leading the charge in this segment. And they have a new AIS system called the Cortex. And Leonard and Lorena just installed a unit on their boat. One will go on my boat in another week. And we're testing with some really advanced, really neat capabilities that system has, and we're learning it. It is new, it is different, but they've basically combined the functions of the VHF radio with AIS with some, as I said, some capabilities that we'll talk to you about. So that's about all the time we have. Peter Schrappen has put the resource link on the chat line for technicians for the area. And Peter, thank you for putting it up there. And I want to recognize our sponsor, and I'm going to try to do this again. And Doug, I'm going to push yours off, and let's see if I could show this. We're very pleased to have the Groesbeck Realty Group sponsoring Seattle Boat Show Live. And I think this is showing now. I tried to show this last week. This is a home that is available in Anacortes. It's in the Latitude 48 development, nice nautical sounding name, which is out, as you can see, and behind this home on the picture. It's overlooking the Guaymas Channel and the Washington State Ferry Terminal in Anacortes. And it's literally 2 blocks from my home, so I can attest it's a great view. This is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house with great views, brand new, 3-car garage, 3,200 square feet. It is available. And as I've said on our previous real estate properties that we've teased to during this show, they typically sell within a week or two of our talking about them. So if you're interested in this, give Jean Groesbeck and her associates a call, and they can make the time for you to see this. It is fantastic. It's also on their website, along with more pictures and some beautiful views of that. So Jean, thank you again for sponsoring this and sponsoring this great information for our Seattle Boat Show Live show. Peter, have I forgotten anything?
You know, you were on point as always tonight, Mark. Nice work. I really appreciate it. I learned a great deal. That was a nice work as well, Doug.
But what about next week's show?
I think we've got cooking, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes, I'll be quite loquacious, I have a feeling, during that one. I actually wanted to wish you, Mark, to you and yours, a happy National Homemade Cookie Day.
Oh, well, well, you know what I saw is coming up actually a week from tomorrow, or a week from today, is National Harbor Masters Day. So maybe I ought to have one of our favorite harbor masters next week make a cameo appearance. So if any of you have some ideas, send us a text or information on who you would want to nominate for a harbor master we should recognize. We have a few that are favorites that have been extra great to us along the way. So that'll be next week.
You got cooking though.
We'll have Doug back a couple weeks after that, talk about the Cortex. We'll probably shoot a little video on Leonard's boat, Leonard and Lorena's boat, to show how it operates. That ought to be fun. And let me stop my screen share here. There we go. And as Peter said, thank you all very much for joining us.
If anyone has any topics or any feedback on the show, you can always email me at peter@nmta.net. Big show next week, cooking on your boat. Looking forward to that one. And I think that's all we've got planned for tonight. That's episode 20 of season 1 of Seattle Boat Show Live. That would mean that Diane Cannon hosted Saturday Night Live, Tacoma, Washington's own, the City of Destiny's own Diane Cannon.
There's a tidbit I didn't know.
I had to wait to the end of the show to get that in there. And did you spend a lot of time in DoubleTree hotels, Mark, through your travels? Have you DoubleTree hotels, the Marriott?
I used to travel 4 days a week when I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah.
And plenty of DoubleTree hotels.
DoubleTrees, they're famous for their cookies. They're famous for their cookies. And they actually just revealed their recipe, and I was going to put that in the chat box. As
Do
a
we
way.
want to know, or is there something in there?
Lard, lots of
Lard.
lard.
My
No, I was just-
grandmother used it for years, and
Well, you
Look
turned
what
out okay, right? Yeah, you turned out okay. I was looking at a recipe for pasta sauce earlier in the week, and the secret to this simple sauce was 5 tablespoons of butter. There's 28 ounces of tomatoes, which isn't crazy, but I mean, I guess I could guess if butter would be the secret to happiness, but there you go. Well, awesome. Well, that's all.
Peter, on that note,
Yeah, exactly. Go hit the fridge. I'm hungry.
Hungry.
Oh, Landon's good night. Doug Miller, good night. Thanks for being
Thank
on the
you.
show. And Mark, I'll
Thank
see you
you,
next
Doug.
week. And thanks everyone
Thank you
tuning in
all.
at home. All right.